As you create things for your scenes, whether those items are two-dimensional or three, you're going to find yourself constantly shaping and reshaping the things you've made. One of the reasons that 3ds Max has been crowned the most widely used 3D animation program in the world is because of the robust set of tools it offers that make that shaping and reshaping process a little easier. Before you can fully capitalize on the software's modeling abilities, though, it's going to be necessary to learn the jargon it uses in labeling certain things. It's the old talk the talk, in other words. Now, that language in part starts by understanding that each and everything you make will consist of a bunch of smaller little pieces of geometry that basically tie together to create the surface that makes each object look the way it does. Those smaller parts are collectively referred to as sub-object components, and they can be moved, scaled, or rotated in order to change the look or shape of what you're working on. Now, to understand what we're going to be talking about here, it's important that we get comfortable using a couple of specific terms you'll continually be using when working in Max. Vocabulary, in essence, that serves as the software's language. I think first off, we need to make a distinction between the actual terms that Max uses to describe both two-dimensional and three-dimensional things in a scene. You see, when Max thinks of something 2D, it officially refers to that as a shape. When it's working with something 3D, it refers to that as an object. So got that? From here on out, when I refer to a shape, I'm going to be talking about something that's two-dimensional. Now, when you're talking about those little sub-object components, those too will have specific names. Terms that'll be essential to remember, so let's take a look at what you'll be dealing with. When talking about two-dimensional shapes, you'll be working with three different sub-object components. Their names are vertex, segment, and spline. Let's first take a look at the vertex. A vertex is simply a point in space that connects to other sub-object components, to form in this case a line. When you're referring to more than one vertex, you'll use the word vertices. So vertex when referring to one, and vertices when referring to two or more. Now the vertices are connected together by what are called segments, with the line of each segment determining the distance between two adjacent vertices. So vertices are connected together by segments, and at the end of each segment you'll find a vertex. That last component on a 2D shape is what you get when the vertices and segments combine together to form a line. Max refers to that line as a spline. So a spline is basically made up of a series of vertices and segments. Now, be aware that shapes can actually consist of many splines, all depending on how they've been created. So you'll at times be working on shapes that are made up of a single spline, and at other times you'll be working on shapes consisting of several splines. You'll see how all that works when we get to creating a few shapes. Now, as far as those sub-object names, the story's a little bit different when talking about 3D objects. There again, it's the vertices that nail down specific individual points in space. But the lines that connect those vertices together when talking 3D, they're no longer referred to as segments, they're instead called edges. Now, on most types of surfaces you'll be creating, those little vertices and edges then lock together to form three-sided triangles. When the triangles fill with a skin, you have something called a face. So edges are connected together by vertices, and as they tie together, they form small little three-sided triangles. The triangles then fill with a surface, and it's that surface that's then referred to as a face. Now, one other term you'll be using is polygon, or poly for short. All a poly is a series of connected faces that consist of four or more sides. So it's really just another way of saying two or more neighboring faces that have an edge in common. That's a poly. Now, every bit of what I've mentioned here is big-time stuff. So remember what sub-object means, and remember the names that we've given to each one of them. If you want to get the most out of the program,